Katie Thomas is a CPA, entrepreneur, and one of the most influential voices in the accounting profession today. After beginning her career in public accounting, she recognized that many firms struggled not because of their technical ability, but because they lacked clear positioning, visibility, and strategy for growth. That realization led her to found Leaders Online, where she helps accounting firms and accounting technology companies build authority, differentiate themselves, and grow with intention. Katie has been recognized as one of the most powerful women in accounting and a top 50 woman in accounting, and she has built a significant following by challenging traditional thinking and helping firm owners see what's possible beyond compliance work. She brings a unique perspective, combining deep technical expertise with clear understanding of what it takes to build a modern, successful accounting firm. Katie, welcome to Protea Conversations. It's so great to speak to you today.
Hey, Zane. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited for this.
Yeah. It's always nice to get really smart people who are doing great things on the show. And, I was in my prep. I always knew you were quite impressive, but then I started looking at all the awards that you've been winning over the last, few years. And it's a long, long list and really impressive. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a journey, to say the least.
Is there any one of those awards that sort of is your favorite, that sticks out, that you're sort of most proud of?
That's a good question. I think for me, getting 40 under 40 was always a big goal of mine. And I don't think it's necessarily more important than any of the others, but that was the first one that I was really hoping to get. So whenever I got it, I was like, this is great to be recognized amongst people who I really admire. And I was just very proud to be on a list with some of those people. So I would go with that one.
That is a good one. I got a local 40 under 40. I just snuck in at 39 and 300 days or something silly like that. But that was always fun. But I also, that's a nice one to win. Oh yeah, I did something great before, the age when they say you start dropping off.
Yeah, no,
Not anymore.
congratulations.
Yeah. Well, great. I'm so intrigued on how an accountant can go from accounting to marketing, and sort of what was that thought process, or what happened that made you make what seems like a fairly dramatic switch? I see them as like polar opposites almost, and you've been able to do it really successfully.
Well, yeah, looking at it now, if you're just hearing my story for the first time, you're like, okay, CPA, now marketing, like you said, polar opposites. But my story actually started out, I was in my teens and I was building websites. I grew up in a family that owned a small business. And so I really just kind of jumped in and started learning about marketing from a really young age. I was running Google Ads in the golden days whenever it was just cents a click. And I did marketing on the side all the way through college. But when I was in college, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to study. I knew I liked business and numbers, and I had a suspicion that I would be an entrepreneur someday myself. And so people said, hey, accounting is the language of business. And I thought, okay, great. I took my first class. I loved it. Long story short, ended up getting my master's in it, getting my CPA, and going to work at one of the big four firms. And while I was there, I realized not only do I miss marketing, but I think that I could really help out some of the people in our industry. And so before I actually left my accounting job, I remember I went to one of the partners at the firm and I was like, hey, can I do BD work? And he kind of laughed at me because at these bigger firms, you typically have to really work your way up to do any sort of BD work. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm just going to try this and see what happens, because worst case scenario, I can come back to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's fair. It is interesting how in the big firms where business development is the senior part, but they also expect you to try look for opportunities all the time. That there's that weird dichotomy that if you're not got the title, you can't do the business development, but you better be looking for new work. So I can imagine how those conversations went.
Yeah, it was definitely frowned upon, but hey, it all ended up working out in the end.
Was there any part of it that was difficult for you? That you thought, did you have any doubts in your mind that maybe this is the wrong decision? You said you could come back, but it's still a scary step. I mean, it's a significant change in what you're doing, even though if you'd built the experience from a young age?
When I left, I had doubts right before I resigned, like going back and forth for a little bit. Should I do this? Am I crazy to try this? But they actually weren't too loud. And I think part of that was because I was so confident that I could go back to what I was doing now. I think a lot of times people forget whenever they take that leap what you're doing right now is a baseline. Typically, you just return to that. And so for me, I did have that sense of comfort, like, hey, I can come back to this. And then something happened after I left that really propelled me forward. And that was, I thought, okay, I just gotten married. My husband he had a great job at the time. And so I was like, I'll have a little bit of padding here to get going and start making money. Well, right after I left, we found out he was going to need a really big back surgery and actually be off of work for the foreseeable future. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I don't have a lot of time to figure this out. I need to make this work now, and just went all in. So while it seemed stressful at the time because I thought, okay, I have this cushion, this padding, it actually was the biggest blessing, I would say.
That's so interesting. I would say most people, if that happened to them, that all of a sudden something so dramatic happened in their lives, would fall back into the space of comfort, right? Go back to a big CPA firm where your salary is effectively guaranteed, there's security, there's growth opportunity, but still, instead, you went for the danger, the entrepreneurial, you're going to back yourself. And I think that's fantastic that you did that. But I don't think most people would, especially people who have sort of, for lack of a better word, been groomed in the accounting space where, we're sort of taught reduce risk, reduce risk, reduce risk. You really went the opposite way again and just said, okay, I'm going to take this big risk. I'm going to, put it all in on myself and hope for the best.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to get the mindset because I feel like I'm 100% certain I would have just gone back to the previous job.
I think a part of it at that time too, when I was leaving, I would watch a lot of people's stories online, and I was constantly consuming content of people who went out on their own, not necessarily doing what I did, but I did see and hear what was possible. And so I think that who you surround yourself with really matters. And while I was at a firm at the time surrounded by this very structured, kind of linear, non-risky path, I was able to get influence and perspective and, in a way, have mentorship from people who had gone out and maybe not followed the same path I did, but ultimately going towards a similar goal. And so that really helped me too. I felt like I had seen or heard enough people do it that I was under the belief, okay, if this many people had figured it out before, I can too. I may not be the smartest person out there, but I have a very good work ethic, and I've always felt very strong in my belief that I can, again, I'm not the smartest, but I can put in the work and I will figure it out.
Yeah, I love that. So tell us, how did you figure it out? Like, you just ran off and hope for the best, and you put in the hard work, and like, how though? Like, how did you do it?
I did sign up for one coaching program at the time, and I think it was $6,500. It was $6,500 or $7,000. And I remember they asked me for my credit card, and I gave it to them. This was on the phone, and it declined. And I was like, what's going on? Why is this declining? Well, I didn't even have a credit card limit to pay for that. So I had to called and got my credit card limit increased so I could buy that. But that coaching program also really helped me, again, see what other people were doing and see, okay, there are a lot of people out there making this work. The most important thing was, once I left and got started, was, okay, how do you actually get your first client whenever you don't have people to say, hey, I've worked with you before? So this is where you just got to go out, and you're either physically knocking on doors, you're knocking on doors on social media, you're getting in front of people. And once you get that first yes, and you make sure that you do a good job, then you start getting some traction. And once you get that traction, it's easier to have more wins, more success. But yeah, ultimately that beginning, is a bit of a grind. I'm sure, as you know, it is challenging to start because you're starting from ground zero. And that first, yes, it was $500. That was the most amazing feeling to be like, wow, someone can pay me for this. And it started validating my proof of concept that this would work. I also will say before I left my accounting job, I was doing tutoring on the side for people wanting to get their CPA exam.
Hmm.
And so I think that that experience as well helped me realize, okay, even if, let's say, this marketing thing doesn't work out, I do know in the meantime, I have a way to earn a living, provide value to people, and make some sort of impact because I was doing that as well.
No, that is great. Did you always want to just help accountants? Was that sort of the plan from?
When I left, that was my thought process because I really like the industry. I love the industry. I love
Mhm.
accounting. I'm such a nerd when it comes to this industry. And so I wanted to stay in accounting if it was possible, and it was, but I was open to working with different industries if that was the path that I was led down. I was
Yeah.
open and flexible.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Sort of, you're getting going. Let's see where I resonate, and we'll find a space. And obviously, being an accountant yourself, that does help. I remember we met like early days. This might even been in your first year on LinkedIn, and I got an email from some random person asking for a call, and it was really impressive. And I was probably the worst person that you spoke to during that period of time because I can be moody at the best of times. But was that part of it? Sort of just reaching out, sort of seeing how you could help people.
Yeah, just reaching out. And you have to be the one to put yourself in those conversations, get yourself in the rooms, go to the conferences. That's going to be someone's, I would say, biggest barrier is just, it's not the work or figuring out how to do the work, but it's being willing to put yourself out there and be the one to say, hi, how are you? Tell me more about yourself. Start the conversation.
I'm assuming there was a fair amount of rejection in those early days.
Oh, yeah. And I would say there still is,
Yep.
right? If you aren't getting rejection, then I'm under the impression you probably aren't asking enough or putting yourself out there enough.
Yep. No, that's fair. How did you deal with like the rejection in those early days? Because I'm sure, like I know now when I get a no from a potential client, like, oh, okay, whatever, we're not a right fit, or they'll be back. One of those, those. But in the early days, I get a no, I'd be like, oh my gosh, they hate me. What is going on? Like, but you learn that resilience, or you get used to people saying no. How did that feel to you when you first started?
That's a good question. So when I was 16, my first official W-2 job was actually doing cold calls, and the rejection you would get on those was very harsh and stern
Hmm.
sometimes. People can be pretty abrupt and rude on these calls, especially back when I was 16. Now we have phones that send a lot of these calls to voicemail, or just depending on your settings, you really
Yeah,
don't even get them. But back then, that was not the case. A lot of people answered the phone. And so I had to get thicker skin pretty quickly during that time. And when I started my business, I was doing a lot of reaching out over the computer. And so it wasn't as personal at the time. No was okay, just delete the email and move on. It didn't feel as harsh as when I was picking up the phone and calling people. Had I not had that prior experience, I think it would have stung more. But I was able to carry that thicker skin into this new stage of what I was doing.
that's great. Yeah, I mean, cold calling at 16, that will develop some calluses that will carry over in its life to make life a little bit easier. So yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
When you first started out, what was the tactic? How did you get in front of people? How did you sort of make yourself seen? Like, how did you sort of put yourself out there as an expert?
I first started on social media and I picked LinkedIn as the platform because I thought, okay, I don't really know anyone on this platform. And so my friends and my family and my colleagues from the firm, they're not even going to really notice or see me. And so I picked it, and it turned out to be a great platform because accountants are really easy to find on the platform. So I started posting, I started commenting on other people's posts, I started adding them as connections and starting conversations. I did cold email. I really did all the online outbound outreach that you could do. And every, you know, person you touch, you may not get a yes right away, but that person can become a yes later on. So for me, it was just about like, hey, how many people can I talk to, get to know? And it doesn't matter if it's a yes right now, but at least let's just talk to them. Let's see what their problems are. And maybe they won't talk to me, but it's funny because some of those people that I initially reached out to, now years down the road, they've reached out for help. But I don't know if I wouldn't have introduced myself to them back then. Who knows? Maybe they wouldn't be comfortable reaching out now. So I think it's just a mindset of going out to meet people and network. It's not about trying to get a yes today or necessarily even tomorrow. It's just put yourself out there.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice. I mean, we've had clients that we've taken on board, which like they'll randomly reach out to me and be like, "Hey, sorry, I haven't got back to you. Let me know if we could talk again because I want to work with you." I'm like, "Okay." I don't know who this person is. You look at the trailing email; it's like 4 years back. You're like, "Jeez, I don't
Right?
know," but they clearly remembered me and decided this is the time. So it does, putting yourself out there, having those conversations, like you said, like it's not every conversation has to lead to a yes, but it is about creating connection, being seen, putting the thought in people's heads. So when their need does arise, at least you're coming to mind.
Right. And I think it's also important to remember, let's say you're even having a conversation with someone who's interested. It's not just about getting a yes. It might be about getting to the point that you're like, hey, you know what? This isn't a good fit. I'm
Yeah.
not the best person to help you. So even having that mindset of it's really just a discovery call to see like, does this make sense? I think that that helps too.
Yeah, that is helpful, but that touches on a point that I think accountants and there's a lot of accountants that listen to this podcast, but probably professionals in general really struggle with, which is I had this conversation, in the back of my head, I know this is probably not a good fit, but it's revenue. So I should say yes every single time. And that leads to, unhappy people,
Hmm.
dissatisfied workforce, all those terrible things that come with it. But we constantly keep doing the same thing over and over and saying yes to stuff that we probably shouldn't have. It's a really, really tough skill to learn how to say no. How have you developed that over time?
Probably like a lot of people is the hard way. You say yes and your gut's telling you no. And pretty soon you are working late or you're dealing with a difficult client or your team member's like, hey, this is not going well. And you're like, dang it, I knew I should have said no. That happens a few times, and I feel like it starts building that muscle where you're confident in, okay, this is what I do. This is what I'm good at. These are the people I like working with. And if they don't fit in the box of this or close to the box, then that no becomes easier. It also becomes easier over time as your revenue, like that client coming to you is, and I'm generalizing here, is often not as big of a, hey, we really need this revenue. When you're
Yep.
just starting out, you're like, okay, money, I need to start earning a living. I need to start earning a profit. And so by not having that experience of what happens when you say yes to wrong fit clients combined with a lot of people do need to earn money pretty soon after they start, it is more challenging at the beginning to say no.
Yeah, I think those are all good points, but we still make those mistakes. There's still clients I bring on board, which I'm like, damn it,
Right?
why did I say yes? And I just think sometimes it's like they slip through the cracks sometimes, right? Like people can just get you on the right day where you're feeling generous. You're like, yeah, whatever, let's go for it, let's help. Um,
Right.
you know, I think it is a tough process to learn. There's always going to be the issues. You're probably never going to get it perfectly right, but you know, don't be scared to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's super important. But along those lines, also, whenever you do say no, I think sometimes we can say no because we're too timid to do something. And this isn't necessarily when working with people, but you hear people say a lot, okay, every time you say yes, you're saying no to other things. And I
Mhm.
fully agree with that. However, if you're saying no to going to an event because you don't want to not know anyone, or maybe you don't apply to speak at some conference because you're like, "Oh, I've got a lot going on." But deep inside, it's just like you're saying no because you're too timid and you don't want to put yourself out there. I think it's important to distinguish like, am I saying no because of fear, or am I genuinely saying no because, you know, you actually don't want to do it or it doesn't make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, and it's interesting because I've had these conversations with my kids, right? Like it's okay to do things that are a little bit scary because
Hmm.
that means you're growing and you're moving forward. But when that scary becomes fear and it stops you from doing something, like that's when it becomes a problem. And as you're talking, there's like example, like a big project comes along, right? And it's bigger than anything you've ever done. And it's everything's telling you yes, but the fear of failure on that, what is outside of your comfort zone and you say no, like that's a bad no. And that's
Right.
where you don't want to get stuck.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, you explained that perfectly.
Great. Good on me. I want to go back to LinkedIn because I know you've been super successful there. I love following your content. Apparently, a lot of people do 50,800 and something as of this morning when I checked. So, maybe it's even grown since then. Tell me about that. Like, that's crazy numbers. People clearly have enjoyed what you are saying, what you're sharing. I know every piece of content you put out there, I shouldn't say every, most content that you put out there adds a ton of value. I love reading it. I learn a lot from it. I feel like sometimes I have you as my consultant and I can just, read it, read your newsletter, those types of things. Tell me about that journey from, I'm assuming, zero connections when you first started out, putting yourself out there, hoping that things will turn into a business with hard work, and now just having this massive following on this platform.
Yeah, I started at 0 and I started posting, and at first you don't get much traction and you're the one going out doing a lot of the networking, the outbound, connecting with people. You're the one starting all the conversations. And then over time, after being consistent and continuing to make time to post, engage with people, connect with people, my platform did grow and it continues to grow. But I think a lot of times people think that there's, you grow a platform and there's not work. There's a lot of work, which you probably do know because you post a lot of great content online. It takes a lot of work and a lot of commitment to create content, to engage with others, to put yourself out there again and do that consistently day in and day out. I started really getting active on LinkedIn over 7 years ago. So that's 7 years of consistency,
Mm.
which I'm so glad I did it. And it's been so rewarding, not just in terms of helping my business grow, but the people I've met, but it is really important to remember it took 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard work, right? Like anything, if you want to be successful, you got to put in the work. And, creating content isn't easy. You make it look easy, but it isn't easy. And I'm always just intrigued, like, what advice do you give to people who want to get going on social media or going on any platform to sort of grow their influence, their client base? Like what is the advice to everybody?
You just have to start. It's really easy to say, okay, I want to do this, but oh, I'll do it next week or next month. You have to truly make a commitment and put it on your calendar. For example, I film one piece of long content every Tuesday, and there are plenty of Tuesdays where I don't want to do it. And no one really is going to hold me accountable. Like, yes, my team is planning on that work coming through, but I could easily be like, hey, I just don't want to do it. I'm not in the mood. That's where the commitment comes in. And just like you would not miss a meeting for one of your clients, you can't miss that meeting for yourself. So commit to it and just do it.
Yeah, no, that is great advice. I got to be better at putting it in my calendar as well. I sort of just fit it in where I can, which is not the best. I'm a terrible example of how to show up on social media. I sort of wing it most of the time. Mm.
Well, hey, I think that's great to share too. For some people, that works. And like for you, it clearly has worked really well. So if you know yourself and you're like, I'll do it when it works and when it makes sense, then that's great. But if you are someone saying like, hey, I want to do this and you have been saying it forever, then maybe it's time to just pick a start date and hold yourself accountable.
Why do you think accountants are so scared to put themselves out there?
I think it's because they're scared of being judged by their peers, by friends, maybe clients. I hear this all the time. I don't want to look like a show off. And they might not use the word show off, but it's that kind of language that comes through. And the thing is, it's like, okay, well, do you consume social media? Most people say yes. Do you learn things from the people that you're following? Or are you entertained by them? Are you getting some sort of value? Yes. And so it's like that's exactly what you can do. You can be that person providing that value, that entertainment, whatever your style is to your audience. But you have to just essentially stop worrying about other people because the truth is they're not actually worrying about you, they're worrying about theirself.
Yeah. Yeah, that is good advice. I think one of the things that people like fearful of, they'll see people like post and get like, I saw a post this morning, like 820 something reactions. I was like, holy, I've never got that before. But when I started out, like I would celebrate, like I got 5 people to react to my post today. Like, and it was like, it was fantastic. I was like, that's amazing. My first
Yeah.
post that hit like 1,000 people, like impressions. I celebrated it like one of my greatest achievements. Like if you hold yourself to like lower targets and don't like get sucked in, like, yeah, and like if people go to your content, they see all the reaction, the comments, like, oh, look how easy Katie made it. Like, it's 7 years of work, right? Like, it didn't just happen overnight, and you've got a process to do it. Like, you can't judge yourself on people that have been doing this for a long time, put in the long work. Uh, you sort of gotta, you got to be fine with where you are right now and understand that this is a process. And if you've got goals and aspirations, like set them for yourselves and set little stepping stones and just get going. I know I still get posts where I get like, I'm the only person to like to post. It happens. And you sort of just got to put your ego aside and just do it, especially if you
Yeah.
think you can add value.
And I would bet even if you didn't get any likes besides yourself on that post, you still got impressions. I feel like people forget that it's real humans. It's like if you had, let's say you get 20 impressions on a post, that's 20 people that saw your post. And if you think about that in terms of people sitting in a classroom, that's great. That's amazing. And so it's all about perspective.
No, for sure. I mean, I spoke at a conference, wine industry conference in December, and it's like there were 45 people in the crowd. Like that's an in-person live event. I only got to speak to 45 people, and there's probably about 6 or 7 of them were journalists, 4 people from my team. So we're
Yeah.
down to 20% of the crowd, like had to be there, right?
Yeah.
They weren't choosing to be there. And you put one post out there, and also you get 100 impressions. Like you've just done
Yeah.
better than I did at speaking at a live event.
Right, right. It's amazing whenever you think about the people you can reach, all for essentially free.
Yeah. A little bit of your time. And I also think, like I try to imagine how many people that is. Like when I have a post that does well, I'm like, there's conferences that don't get that many people.
Right.
Like I've
Yeah.
just like, I don't know if they're good impressions, but they're impressions. People saw it. Like you had to stop and actually look at it. Like there was a little bit of reading that because you can scroll past things and not give people impressions. So, there is some need for it. And if you're doing it right, you're going to get the right people to see the content.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people just get sucked in, like, I need to be, you know, an accounting influencer. And I don't think that should be everybody's goal. Like, I do some accounting stuff, but I only really care about how does my stuff about the wine industry do. Like, those are the only ones
Right.
that I really pay attention to, impressions and likes, and especially the articles I put out, how many people read it, because those are my target clients. Those are the people I want to help. And, I think we can get distracted by the people who are being accounting influencers versus, hey, I'm trying to add a value to a specific audience because those are the people I'm trying to help.
Yeah, and you brought up a really important topic. It's not even just about how many people saw your post or liked it. Are they the right people? Because let's say you get 1,000 views of the wrong people, that's not worth anything, where 50 views of the right people could be a total game changer.
No, I mean that is important, and that's trying to figure out who you're talking to. And we're speaking about LinkedIn right now. Maybe that's not the right platform for you. If you're talking to doing accounting for creatives, like they're probably not on LinkedIn. They're on Instagram and TikTok and all the
Mhm.
ones where people can be a little bit more creative. So maybe it's not the right platform for you. And I see that people making that mistake a lot of time, just being in the wrong space.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you help people sort of figure out where they need to be when they're trying to sort of build that authority?
Yeah, that's one of our first conversations is who are you trying to reach and what is your ultimate goal? For some people, accountants that we're working with, for some of them, they will say that they want to be that accounting influencer. They want to connect with more accountants, and that's great. And then most, they do say that they want to grow their firms, attract new clients. And so that's where we have to be like, okay, where are they hanging out? What topics do they like? What do they care about? And we have to go to those platforms so we can actually build and engage over there. For the people who say that they want to grow their firm, sometimes whenever you look at their profile, though, they have really been just attracting more accounting communities. It's important to have that discussion up front. Like, okay, what do you really want? Because ultimately, that's what matters at the end of the day. Like, what's your goal? It might not be what someone else that you're following, what they're doing and what their goal is. Like, what's your goal?
Yeah, and I think that is the tough part because it doesn't matter how, niche or specific your information is. You're going to attract a lot of accountants no matter where you go, but you got to try like filter that out and look at like, okay, yeah, I try to see who read my post, like what
Hmm.
are the people, what role are they, what industry they, and that's, I think that's the tough part of sort of just figuring it out because like, was that worthwhile? That post, who read it? 1,000 impressions, 995 accountants, probably didn't resonate as I wanted it to. And that can be tricky. Obviously, getting help from a firm that focuses on marketing is really helpful. Makes a difference. I have people in the background helping me with other aspects outside of social media. Important. Like I tell people, hire professionals to do work that, you're either not good at or need specialization. And, that's where marketing firms like you come in, and Katie. So tell us just a little bit more. Like I've spoken so generally a little bit more, but, tell me more about sort of your business, Leaders Online, sort of what it is, what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah. So we work with accounting firms that range from that range from one partner at their firm all the way up to top 100. We focus purely on digital marketing, so no print marketing. We don't get involved in conferences, things like that. Social media is a huge aspect of how we help firms, and we help them in one of two ways. We either help them grow their firm through attracting new clients or attracting new staff. We're not a recruiting agency, but we have a really great process where we can help firms attract top talent. Those tax managers that no one can find, we have great luck helping firms recruit those. We also help by being their outsourced CMO, so fully strategy. We'll work with your team. If you have team members, we'll work with your other vendors, help you come up with the strategy, monitor the strategy, and then implement pieces where we can help or you need us to fill in. And then outside of that, we'll also help with things like your website, SEO, other various content aspects that you need covered, like if you need your podcast produced or you need content on your website done, we do all of that. But typically, we're working with you first on social media or we're your outsourced CMO.
That's great. How do people find you other than finding you on LinkedIn and dropping you a message? Sort of what's the best way for people to reach out, sort of find out more about what you do?
So you can always find me on all social media platforms. I'm Katie Thomas, CPA. LinkedIn, I'm there a lot. Or if you will go to leaders-online.com and you book a consultation there, we can get in touch.
Okay, that's good. That's the professional part out of the way. Now we can move back more into the fun questions. Tell me about your regular week. Like, what does a life in the day of Katie Thomas look like?
So Mondays and Fridays, I keep just for handling anything admin related. I have team meetings those days. If for some reason a client call had to get pushed or rescheduled, those will float to Mondays and Fridays as needed. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's all me like working in the business, client meetings and so forth. This allows me to best separate, okay, Monday and Friday, I've got to like really work on the business with my team versus in the business those 3 days of the week. As far as day to day, I try to work between 9 and 4 now that I have kids. And those are like my hard working hours. But typically I'll be caught working like 5, 6 a.m., but not late at night anymore. So gotten a lot better balance.
I'm assuming in the early days, those hours stretched a little bit further each direction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was really no break outside of running some errands. I worked all the time and I don't regret it. I think it was great. It allowed me to get a good jump start, figure a lot of things out. But now that I have like processes in place and I have a great team that I can rely on, it's a lot easier to step back some.
Fantastic. What about that conference season? What does that look like? How do you get involved there? How often are you getting out into the community? What does that part of the outreach look like?
As far as conferences go, I want to go to every year 2 to 3 conferences. That's always my goal. And then if others work out, that's a bonus to me. But I find 2 to 3, like Engage, QuickBooks Connect, and then another one that usually allows me to connect with a lot of my clients, a lot of my friends, see people like yourself. And so, it's a balancing act traveling whenever you also have a family.
No, I feel you. I'm on the wine industry conference tour at the moment, and it's there's a lot of not at home time, and it definitely is challenging with an 8 and a 10-year-old at home.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure.
You and your husband work together, right?
Yeah, we do. He helps on pretty much all the tech side of things. And so that's where it gets interesting as well with conferences. Is he goes to a lot of conferences. And so sometimes we can both go to them. Sometimes we're like, okay, who's going to this one and who's going to that one? We never know how it's going to work out, but it always does.
Tell us how it is working with your spouse. I do it on a daily basis, so I've got a sense. But what's your experience?
I'm sure it really depends on the person if they say it's a good idea or a bad idea. We are very similar on all personality tests. And what's interesting is that would point to like what we come out as we would probably like very much butt heads. But how we actually work and what we are good at is very different. So he's super into the technology. I mean, he's in Claude Code every day. That is not me. And so he is an expert at what he does, and I'm an expert at what I do. And that way we know very clearly like what lanes we belong in. And so it works really well. But I want to hear your experience now.
Well, we're polar opposites, like
Okay.
literal polar opposites on personality tests. So I think it's great to work together. My wife probably has a slightly rougher experience than I do because I'm in that sort of direct red, type personality state, which I think can be tough for anybody. But it's all about developing, boundaries and
Yep.
knowing like this is work time. This is, in theory, I'm her boss. So this is time when you're talking to boss. This is time when you're talking to husband. Sometimes I'd need her to like remind me, like, hey, I'm talking to husband right now, not talking to boss, because those are going to be two significantly different responses to the
Uh-huh.
same feeling, emotion question. So it takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of balance. I'm pretty good at just, I'm very like box, box, box. We can have a fight right here, and I can turn like, cool, what's happening for dinner? And like nothing just happened. But it takes work. I wouldn't have it any other way. I love working with Candace. It's always been great, but it takes work. I don't think it's for everybody.
Yeah. I think our biggest challenge, like you said, it takes work, was learning everyone's like each other's preference on when we work. I know I said before I used to work all the time. And so when we were working together at the beginning, it was like, oh, why don't you want to work all the time? And it's like, it's okay if people are different and have different goals. I can't project what I want to do onto him and vice versa. So I would say that that was what we had to work through at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that's an important learning curve for everybody. Like, I have the ability to work 100 hours in a week. Like, I can do
Mhm.
it. I know I've done it multiple times in my life before. Most people can't do that and still function normally, right? And it's realizing that other people can't function that same way makes
Mhm.
everything else a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you said, just like knowing, what works for people is important, and, finding that balance and making sure you guys hit the, you know, run alongside each other and not bump into each other because you're both trying to do what you're doing without considering what the other person is trying to do.
Yeah. And I would say that was a big learning curve, even with people on my team, is realizing, okay, what motivates them? What's their end goal? Because it's easy whenever you have a picture in mind of like what you would want to achieve to start projecting that onto someone else. Like, oh, that's what they want. That's what would make them happy. When in reality, it might be totally different. And so just taking a step back and making sure that you're asking and finding that out for me was and has been really important.
Yeah, I think just great like leadership advice right there is, if you're leading people, working with people, just being a good human is figuring out what other people really want, right? And it's understanding that we all have different goals, all have different desires, we're all, running different paths, and be able to take that moment to have those conversations with people and find it out and then sort of figure out how do we all work together.
Hmm.
That's huge. You don't have to be the owner of your own firm. You don't have to be a manager in a firm. Like if you're just on a team, understanding that everybody's got different expectations in life just makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly.
As a side note, that like when you're setting what your mission and your values and, your culture at your firm, like those things are important because you want people with different personalities, but you want to make sure that we're all at least running towards the same goal.
Right. And I think the different personalities is great because then, everyone kind of has their own strengths and weaknesses and you need that variety. It's great. But what you said is so true is everyone's going towards the same goal.
Yep. Yeah, and we definitely, if everybody was a personality like mine, it would explode pretty quickly because it would be abrupt and fiery all the time, which is definitely not good. We need those other personality types. Katie, what are you working on at the moment? What are your short-term goals for the business or life or just anything?
So, from a career standpoint, I mean, it's probably what a lot of people are talking about. AI has really been front and center. How can we use it to allow everyone else to stay more creative, spend more time on the human to human relationships? Where does it fit into our workflow where it doesn't remove authenticity? That's been a big focus over the past year. And then personally, my goals are to continue down this path that I would say I really started a year ago. For so long, my entire life, I've tied myself and what I've accomplished, if it was good enough, to some sort of number or grade. So school, it was grades. And then it was passing the CPA exam, and then it was, okay, what job do you get? And then you start a business and it's like, okay, what revenue can you hit or what profit can you hit? And it was never like I was in competition with somebody external or I was trying to prove a point to anyone out there, but it was myself. It was a race that could never ever be won. That target was just constantly moving. And I didn't recognize it as being a problem till I had my second kid. And when I had him, I was working, talk about working hours. I mean, there was no break ever. I took 0 days off, and eventually you start breaking down if you're just getting zero sleep. And I remember when I started breaking down, I'm like, well, I can't. I have to keep going because I have to do this and this and this. And I started working with a coach, and she was like, well, to get to this, this, and this, like, what do you have to do? And so I started explaining all of it. And she's like, why is that the case? Like, why do you believe that you have to do all this to get there? And I thought, well, if I take my foot off the gas at all, or I let up at all, I'm just going to lose all my goals, lose all my ambition. Like, that's who I am. And it took a lot of work. But now I realize that you can step back, you can turn things over, and one, better things happen because you have mental clarity and you have bandwidth. And two, you yourself, you're worth it. You are worth everything without being tied to some number or something that your mind has created. And I know this has been a really long-winded answer, but basically I learned to detach myself so much from something external and just be okay and content with what I'm doing in the moment. And guess what? Nothing bad happened. It's all good.
No, I mean that is a great goal. I mean, we should all be working to, our worth isn't measured by some value that somebody else puts on us, right? It's sort of how do we feel? I mean, for me, it's are my wife and kids happy? Like
Yeah.
that's my number one. Like, am I successful? My kids are happy. My kids are healthy. My wife is happy. My wife is healthy. Fantastic. The rest, it's all gravy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always heard that. And I always thought, well, everyone being healthy is most important and those kind of things. But it was like I put a different lens when it came to how I viewed myself. So you're right. You're exactly right. And it's like the grace you extend to others, you deserve to give that to yourself.
No, I love that. That's fantastic. Katie, What advice would you give new accountants sort of starting their journey? What advice would you give them?
One, to be bold. So don't say no to something just because you're intimidated by it. So be bold. And then two, be okay if your life looks different from other people for a while. I don't believe people should have to work those 100-hour weeks forever, but
Don't do it.
yeah, no, don't do it. But starting a business is hard. And so there's give and take. If you want to grow faster, you might have to put in more hours initially. Everyone knows their capacity or has to find their capacity. But I do think you have to be okay if your life doesn't look like other people's. So that might be, you're working on weekends. Is that going to frustrate you? Maybe, maybe not. And it's just finding what you want and how you want to get there. That's going to alter what your day to day or your weekends look like, and being okay with that. I think is super important.
Yeah, that is great. I mean, it's aligning in your mind, right? If you want to go from $1 million to $10 million in 2 years, you're going to probably have to put in hours, right? And if you
Right.
don't want to put in the hours, then maybe it's going from $1 million to $1,000,001. Like,
Right.
you have to realign your goals in terms of what you're willing to put in. Um,
Right.
so that is good
Right.
advice.
Once you do it, don't create resentment around it. So if you want to do something and go put in the 100 hours, don't complain about it because that's what you wanted to do. You chose this and just go do it. But if you don't, that's okay too.
That is fantastic. Katie, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I always like to end with some rapid fire questions. So I have 5 questions for you if you're ready.
Okay. Yep.
What's your dream vacation?
Tropical, on a beach, all inclusive, not going anywhere, laying around. That's my dream. So anywhere tropical. Maybe
I must say we did all inclusive last summer for the first time. Highly recommend. Might be hard to come back from.
yeah, that's great.
Do you prefer audiobooks or paper books?
Audiobooks if it's nonfiction or personal development, and then if it's fiction, Kindle.
Nice. If you have 20 minutes to exercise, what would that exercise be?
20 minutes, I'm going to go for a run.
What is your favorite piece of technology that makes your life easier?
My cell phone.
Last question. Growing up, what was your favorite childhood meal?
My favorite childhood meal was fettuccine Alfredo with chicken.
I love it. Katie, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for being on Protea Conversations.
Thanks so much for having me, Zane. I enjoyed our conversation too.
And with that, we ended another Protea Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning and inspiration. Today, we've gained insight from our guests and taken another step towards understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussion has given you valuable takeaways to apply in your own career and life. Don't forget to subscribe to Protea Conversations on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and would love you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice, and conversations that matter. Until then, keep striving for excellence, embracing growth. Thank you for listening, be kind, and goodbye from Protea Conversations.